This is a story. Like all stories, it has a beginning and it has an end. But in this story, the end hasn't been written yet. Not really. And this really isn't the beginning. Socrates said, "Let us begin at the beginning," but this particular story about my journey as a professional registered nurse, well, the beginning's kind of complicated. But let's see where we go from here. I had to get this before I could get the previous slide, which was my license. I had to graduate from nursing school. This was some of the hardest 2 years that I've ever spent in my life, but I persevered and I graduated from nursing school there at the College of Albemarle in Elizabeth City. After graduation, I spent the worst 48 hours of my entire life waiting on my NCLEX results. I know I didn't sleep a wink. But where did I come from? What's my background? I was a military brat, and the places that I lived it pretty much says for itself. I lived a lot of places. I've actually traveled through 48 of the 50 states. And I was born in Cheyenne, Wyoming, but from there we moved to the territory of Hawaii before it was a state, and I lived there for several years, and I lived in a whole lot of places. My father was in the military, and we lived in the Philippine Islands while I was an adolescent. When I was old enough and graduated from high school, I went into the Marine Corps, and for whatever reason they decided to send me to college, and I attended the University of South Carolina, where you can still see on my transcript I declared a nursing major, but the Marine Corps had other ideals, seeing as how there are no nurses in the Marine Corps. Our doctors, our dentists, our corpsmen, we get all those from the Navy, and the Marine Corps said that I wasn't going to be a nurse on their dime. So I always said to myself, well, I'll do my time in the Marine Corps, and I'll get out and I'll go on to nursing school. But you know, life happens, and next thing you know, I'd spent an entire career in the Marine Corps. Top picture is me right before I retired. Some of these pictures here, me jumping out of airplanes in the Marine Corps, shooting field artillery. The top picture is one of me right below the demilitarized zone back in, I believe it was the winter of 1981 in South Korea, right below the DMZ. The middle picture is one of my favorite times in the Marine Corps. I was with the United Nations Protection Force towards the end of my career, and I was operations officer for the American contribution to the UN Protection Force in the former Yugoslavia. And that's me going out on a patrol down on the Serbian Macedonian border there in the former Yugoslavia. And the bottom picture is one of me during Desert Storm with a Iraqi tank there. I'm proud of my service in the Marine Corps. I wouldn't trade it for anything. There were difficult times. I didn't like going to war. Didn't like the things that I saw, but I'm proud to have served my country, nevertheless. I was in the Marines. I attended Central Michigan University and got my first graduate degree in management. When I retired, instead of going to nursing school, because I was faced with a wife that wanted to go to college and 3 children that were still in school, not college, but still in school, I found that nursing was a bridge too far at that time. So I attended Norfolk State University. I didn't graduate, but I got my teaching credentials from there. I then took my job, and this is an actual picture of the school that I worked at. I taught seriously emotionally disturbed kids in a public school that was developed just for them in the Tidewater, Virginia area. And you can see the sad state of disrepair and how old the school was, but this is an actual picture of it. And it was kind of like the kids, they were just cast aside and forgotten by and large. And that taught me more about dealing with kids and having patience. And to where in my present job in the emergency room, I don't have any issues dealing with psychiatric patients. In fact, I rather enjoy working with them because I understand them for the most part. During my education tenure, I attended East Carolina University, and I got my degree in our master's degree in education. And it's also during this time that I took other jobs at Camden Middle School, where I taught special education students. During 3 of my 18 years of education, I spent it running a private military boarding school in Virginia for affluent children. They were pretty much cast aside by their parents. They were affluent and wealthy, and their kids were troubled, and they came here. And I enjoyed the 3 years that I spent there, but I longed to be back in public school. So I went back and I ran an alternative school in Edenton, North Carolina. Education has always been important to me my entire life, and I wanted to be at the pinnacle of my profession, so I strived for a postmaster's degree, and I went to George Washington University, and I got an education specialist degree in leadership and administration, educational leadership and administration. One of the times I spent in education was in Starkville, Mississippi. I was a school administrator down there while my youngest daughter attended Mississippi State University. She wanted her daddy with her. And during the end of her time down there, after she graduated, I sat back and took stock of my life and said, well, I haven't done one of the things that I really set out to do in life, and that was to be a nurse. So I was in my late 50s, and I said, no time like the present, because I certainly am not getting any younger. So I moved back to North Carolina. I took a job back in the classroom teaching emotionally disturbed kids for Onslow County schools. I did that for 1 year while I was taking other classes, prerequisites to get into nursing school. And the classes that I took, to include microbiology here, are all part of the science of nursing in my view. Anatomy and physiology, and of course the fundamentals of nursing, along with chemistry, which I'll be taking next semester. You know, they all form part of what we refer to as the science of nursing. And my COA did a good job of preparing me for the science of nursing. I can't complain about that. Some of the other things that I did in my life and that I've done, and I still do some of them. I was a part-time auctioneer for nearly 20 years. And I rose up to the pinnacle of that profession with the CAI designation. And that taught me a lot about dealing with people and human nature and being able to watch people and interact with them on that basis. I was a beekeeper for many, many years, and if you keep bees, you've got to be a patient person. But also you see the cycle of nature, of life and death. And I was a farmer for part-time several years. And although this isn't a picture of me farming, I took all the welding classes known to man so that I could repair my own farm equipment. And if welding taught me anything, it was about precision and the need for exactitude. And farming, again, the cycle of nature, about life and death as it occurs. Well, after graduation and taking the summer off to go see my children, I took a job here, and this is where I work. It wasn't my first choice, but I had precepted there as a student, and they called me and offered me the job. It's interesting to work there because I'm frequently told by my fellow nurses that I'm too slow, that I need to move the patients along faster, that we've got to get them in and out, that I spend too much time talking to the patients, and that I'm not there to make friends with them, that I just need to get them in and out. But you know, and I need to be careful here, but let's say that you had a theoretical patient that came in and they had what's what could be a terminal disease, and they came in, and let's just say they came in for chest pain, and they were crying and they were scared, and you held their hand and you shed a tear with them. And at the end of their time there, before they were discharged and went home, and they were young, and let's just say they had a child and a spouse, but they found out that their disease had spread even more while they were there in your ER. Well, to me, what that patient needed at that particular time was somebody to listen to them, somebody to grieve with them, somebody to hold their hand, and possibly even shed a tear. And if I'm faulted for being too slow, then so be it. I'll just nod my head and smile and keep on doing the thing that I know is right by that patient. And that to me is the art of nursing right there. And so anyway, my journey continues. My education. This is where my BSN journey begins here at the University of North Carolina in Wilmington. I wrote a poem. It's a Japanese style of poem. It's called a tanka. And most people have heard of haikus with their 5 syllables, 7 syllables, 5 syllables. But a tanka preceded the haiku. And in Japanese it means small song or little song. And it's a 5-7-5-7-7 pattern. I'll read it for you. The tanka of an RN. Help others today. Reach out to someone in need. Give them your best now. Lose ego, self-pity, strife. Give health through education. Education can take lots of form, but I won't try to interpret that form, because everybody that reads a poem, you know, they have their own interpretation of it. But I thank you for listening to me today. This is me in one of my favorite places in the entire world, Natchez, Mississippi. It was me last summer there, standing on the banks of the Mississippi. And I look forward to continuing this journey as a professional RN, learning more about applying evidence-based practices, to getting more education, to developing both the science and the art of nursing. Thank you for listening to me.